Hey everyone, James from TeaDB here, filming another Inbetweenisode here. So today, going to be talking about one concept and also drinking just one or two steeps of a more premium tea than is usually featured on these Inbetweenisodes especially. So the concept I'm going to be talking about is just slowing down and the speed of the session. And I've talked about this in other videos in the past, but wanted to bring this up again just because it's sort of been at the forefront of my mind lately. And one of those reasons is on the tea Discord they have a thing called tea tables. And these tea tables, it's a chance to drink with other people and stuff like that. A lot of us are just drinking solo, so the pace at which we're drinking can really vary. And one thing that I think gets undercovered an awful lot in tea is just the pace of the session. You could potentially drink a tea very fast. And I've noticed drinking with a lot of different drinkers will drink at very different paces. Some of my regular tea friends drink quite quickly and will kill a tea in something like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Others are much slower. And so something like 45 minutes when you're drinking together, or an hour on a tea, they see that as a very appropriate pace. And I've sort of come around to the idea that slowing my normal pace down can really generate better sessions, especially when it comes to higher end teas. So I think the speed of the session in which you're downing sort of steeps matters a lot. In fact, one very bad example of, I think, going quite slowly is TeaDB itself. And part of that is the nature of the format. I'm not going to be advocating for 90-minute TeaDB episodes where we drink one tea over the course of that. But I do think that if we really truly want to appreciate those teas and make the absolute most out of them, we probably drink too fast and we don't cover enough steeps. One thing that going slow really lets you do is sort of figure out the different levels and layers of the tea. For instance, if you were to down something like 5 or 6 steeps of this admittedly very small guy one in like 10 minutes. So that's not an outrageous amount of liquid to drink in 10 minutes. But if you were, you're going to appreciate a lot less of the nuances of sort of the aftertaste, how fast it comes, or the energy and the feeling of the tea than if you were to drink one steep every 10 minutes or so. And then you can really sort of feel that natural progression of the tea. So, there are pros and cons to drinking tea fast and slow. Part of it is just it can be very inconvenient to go slow. So, when I'm drinking ripe in the morning, I'm not changing my habits. I like to get some caffeine in, and I'm enjoying the tea, of course, but am I maximizing like the time in between steeps and like really savoring each gulp? Probably not to the same ability. So it really is kind of a balancing act. But I think especially when we're talking about brewing more special occasion teas and stuff like that, you do really want to slow down. So as a result, I will only be drinking 1 or 2 steeps of this tea on camera at the end, and really trying to go a bit slowly. There's a couple natural things that you can do, and probably a lot of people do these already. But one very practical piece of advice you can do is, rather than using this chahai, gongdaobei, which we do for our normal episodes, is you could just pour straight into the cup and don't stack steeps or stuff like that. Wait each steep to brew a cup until after you're done. And that's just a very natural way and technique, very kind of obvious if you think about it, to just sort of control the pace of the session and prevent yourself from going too fast. So yeah, that's one. Let's move on to the tea. Let me know sort of what pace you all drink your teas at. I found for me on some of these tea tables, tea sessions, when it averages about 1 steep for every 10 minutes or so, I find that's a very pleasant way to sort of just really appreciate the gradual evolution of the tea. And it's, when you're doing something like a Wistaria tea, a tea that we're going to get like 10 really good steeps over, that session can last quite some time. But even just doing that for an hour, 1 steep for every 10 minutes, or even 8 minutes for an hour, I think you really do gain another appreciation for the tea. So, it's not something that everyone can practically do, but it's something that I think people should think about and consider in the same way that we're thinking about other things for brewing. So steep time, temperature, stuff like that. So yeah, the tea I'm going to be talking about is the 2005 Yangqing Hao Yuanshi Senlin, kind of lovingly named by some people in the Western community the YQH long name, just because it has a very long name. Okay, let's get to the tea. Okay, so here we are, and I have been brewing this. This is a different day than I'm filming the actual drinking part of this episode. So I have already drank steeps 1 and 2 over the course of the last half an hour or so. And I have made steep 3 in front of me. I'm going to be drinking that and steep number 4 here, keeping in mind that this is only a small section of looking at sort of the tea and its progression. This I would call kind of the early to mid steeps. The first 2 for me had really a nice bitter and very resinous quality to it. This is a tea that even though I've covered quite a bit of YQH over the series, I don't think this is one that I've actually ever covered on the show or even a report. I might be mistaken about the report part, but I don't remember it. And it's a tea that first actually really caught my eye when I had the pleasure of visiting Yang in spring of 2016, and it was the first tea he served to me. And I really noticed a pretty uncommon feeling for me of just like something very, I'm not going to say sedating exactly, but it's in that sort of category of feelings, sort of in my core and in my gut. And sometimes you just know that a tea has something that's really, really unique and perhaps special. Some people may not actually like that sort of feeling of sedation. Some people would call it energy. Some others might not. Sort of feels like a sort of flow going very, very deep into your body, into your chest and your stomach. But it really, really did catch my attention in a moment where I was really trying to pay close attention to Yang. So I wasn't even necessarily super concentrating on the tea itself, more just trying to ask Yang questions and interview him for TeaDB. So yeah, so I ended up picking up a couple cakes of which I did not open for almost 5 years until earlier this year, when I noticed that this tea, some people had been talking about it and drinking it. So I've had it a bunch of times this year actually, and I continue to think that this tea does have some really special characteristics to it. Don't know what it sells for currently at retail price or anything like that, so I'm not going to speak towards the actual value of it. We're just going to talk about sort of appreciating the tea. So let's quit talking and let's get into this tea. Very sweet aroma coming off of it. Earlier it had a bit of a sharper aromatics to it. I think maybe part of it is because I've let it cool down slightly. It's spent the last 5 years in my storage, so it really has mellowed out of the sort of Yangqing Hao characteristic aroma. Some people call it sort of like the mushroom toothpaste thing. You can definitely sense that here, but it's definitely not nearly as heavy as you would expect a tea coming straight from Yang storage. So something to keep in mind for those that like or dislike that sort of really, really characteristic Yangqing Hao storage note. Cheers. Really dark flavor to this, definitely in that sort of like dark camphor, and it just feels thick and heavy going down. Definitely has some sharp bitterness and even sourness to it. This is not a weak tea, in my opinion. In fact, it's quite strong in its feeling, and it just feels like something big going down. And the feeling is pretty immediate for me. So I'd say this steep is continuing on sort of those early themes of having more of a deep, relaxing, sedating body feel to it. One thing that does make me really feel like this tea will improve with age is it is quite sharp, and it's not the easiest tea to drink. In fact, I'd say it's probably one of the Yangqing Haos that, especially of the Iwu teas, that needs the most time in order to drink. I would really like to try this tea perhaps in, I don't know, I mean, just sometime in the future, 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road. I think this is a tea, Yiwu sort of has this reputation of being sort of like a softer, more mellow area, and I think there's a ton of truth to that. But there's also Yiwu tea that can be really, really quite powerful and strong, both in, this tea has some of that even classic bitterness to it, but also in just sort of like the depth and the body feeling, and I do feel like this is there. Has really nice resinous quality, bitter quality. I think it's very, very promising in that sense. Definitely not a daily drinker. Even if like this was an extremely cheap tea, I don't think this is a tea that anyone would want to drink on the daily. Going to make steep number 4 here. And definitely a tea that I will be just sort of slowly enjoying throughout the day. Have 3 or 4 steeps at a time, and yeah, no need to rush good tea at all. My experience with the other sessions I've had more recently is that once it sort of starts to move into sort of this mid-session, and sometimes you really do notice this when you take your times between steeps, is that it starts to have a more uplift to it as well. Okay, so steep number 4. Go for just a little bit. You can see really just a very simple setup is all you need to make tea, and in fact simpler is oftentimes quite a bit better. I still use this tea tray. You don't even have to use a tea tray really. Put a plate out or put some nice aesthetic stuff that is appealing to you out. For me, I'm not an aesthete, or however you say that word, so it's not something that I focus on. So a good old dirty gaiwan and a cup is good enough for a simpleton like myself. But, you know, do what you like. Aroma has definitely changed a bit. I'd say it started out a little bit more in that woody menthol range, and it's kind of just mellowed into a fairly basic pine wood feel. And again, keep paying attention to how your body is reacting to the tea. I think a lot of tea appreciation also is not just from the immediate sensations and sensorial feelings you get, but also from just how the tea tends to sit and how you feel afterwards. And, you know, that can kind of sound like a sort of loosey-goosey, all cloud in the head sort of thing. And I think there is that danger to it, of course, but I do think there are certain qualities to tea that you really you are not, certainly not in just that sort of upfront flavor. In fact, I would say this tea is an excellent example of people that are just really chasing upfront flavors. This tea is, you know, pretty unremarkable in those things. Or at least there's a lot of teas that do similar things, both within Yangqing Hao and outside of Yangqing Hao. But I do think this tea really shines in sort of how it coats the throat and has sort of like this throat cooling sensation and just the heavier feel. And it really is uncommon for me to feel teas to the depth and the chesty feeling that I get from this tea. And I enjoy those things for absolutely. Cheers. So, interesting. Pretty big body on this one. Definitely pretty sharp. I think it's possible. I think some people may have qualms with the way I tend to brew tea. This tea I'm pushing a little bit more than I normally would, and it's really hitting back in terms of like a lot of sharp bitterness to it. If I was brewing this tea for my wife or for Denny, there is absolutely no way I would push it to this extent. Both of those people, I think, do not would not care for sort of like this really, really upfront bitterness to it. But the bitterness is backed up with a lot of backbone to it, feeling a lot of aftertaste. And let's see if this steep starts to bring sort of like that next phase of more uplift to it. Just feel the tea go down into the body. So heavy menthol to this. Really a pretty simple taste. A little bit of sweetness, a little bit of bitterness to it. And I'm going to say this steep is still sort of in those really early stages of having a more heavy body feeling to it. So I have some friends that are more sensitive to energy than me, and this tea, I'm told, is quite impacting as far as that goes. So something that will put people into sort of a couch lock if you are someone that has that sort of reaction to tea. Also quite heating. I'm wearing this sweater, which might be ill-advised on July 1st, but I find that my body is really starting to sweat, so I will probably be taking this sweater off shortly. That's just for the OnlyFans, by the way, so subscribe. Just kidding. All right, well, I think that just about wraps up this In-Betweenisode. I will be giving this tea a 7.5 rating. That rating is not based off of this session, because as I said, we've evaluated a very small subsection of the tea. Getting some sort of like almost anesthetic feeling on the tongue to this sort of a numbing feel. So 7.5 rating, pretty high rating for my system, or Marco's system, I should say more accurately. Yeah, it's a good tea based off of past sessions. I think it's maybe not the absolute best tea, but it's definitely one tea that I think is worthy of sitting down and just sort of exploring the different layers and textures that you're going to get throughout the session for the tea. Okay, well, hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on this. Yeah, let me know how you like to time your sessions and stuff like that. And to be clear, when I say about 10 minutes per steep, I'm not recommending actually timing that. I think that could definitely impact how you enjoy it if you're so regimented about it. But I do recommend just trying out slower sessions, especially if you've got sort of in the habit like me of just drinking tea fairly quickly. So thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time.